Good morning. I'm Coach Smith, and today I'm going to give you my thoughts on what happened in 2001 on this day, and in reverence to the heroes that helped save countless lives that day. First, I would like to thank the administration of New Brighton High School for allowing me to present this. I'd also like to thank Ms. Holland and Ms. Edens and the varsity cheerleaders and JV cheerleaders for asking me to do so. It's my honor to present this. There are way too many heroes to mention in 5 minutes. So if I forget to mention a certain group, then I apologize in advance. I want to mention all of our military of every branch, our law enforcement officers, firefighters, and medical workers for their continued heroism during these trying times in our country. I would like to ask for a moment of silence for all of these men and women, for they're the ones who run toward trouble when everyone else is running away. Please join me in a moment of silence for these heroes, past and present. Thank you. On September 11, 2001, our country changed forever. Cowardly terrorists who were members of the group Al-Qaeda attacked our country and killed hundreds of American men, women, and children that were going about their everyday lives. These were not military targets. These people posed no threat to any country, idea, or race of people. They were innocent victims in a scheme by a cowardly regime that thought they could decimate the American way of life with one act. They were so very wrong. I could literally talk for hours about all the heroes that sprung into action that day, but I would like to focus instead on a story of a select few people who years earlier were doing what we're doing today. These are some of the people involved with Flight 93. When we think of 9/11 in our minds, we immediately go to the Twin Towers or the Pentagon, and rightfully so. But Flight 93 was a fourth flight that had a mission of destruction that day. Flight 93 took off from New Jersey and was destined for San Francisco. Not long after it was airborne, it turned toward Washington, D.C. The experts say it was heading straight for the U.S. Capitol. A direct hit on our nation's capital would not only kill hundreds, as the Capitol sits on First Street adjacent to Constitution Avenue, which is part of a major thoroughfare in Washington, D.C. But it would dot the I for Al-Qaeda, the exclamation point on a murderous act of cowardice, but not on this day. No, not today. There were many heroes involved with Flight 93, and as I can't talk about them all for time's sake, I do want to focus on 6 individuals. These heroes are Jeremy Glick, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, Todd Beamer, Mark Sassville, and Heather Penny. All of these heroes were at one time or another sitting and listening to someone talk about the great things that our country has done. They were sitting through a pep rally, maybe, like we were supposed to be today. They were hearing programs geared toward doing your best, going the extra mile while others choose not to, and winning the game. Just like we were supposed to be this morning, if not for our current situation. Jeremy Glick was the prom king of his high school. He later married his high school sweetheart and had 2 children. Mark Bingham was from divorced parents. They were divorced since he was 2 years old. He was a self-proclaimed high school computer geek who later formed his own company. Tom Burnett was a high school football player. He was a quarterback. He wore numbers 10 and 11 during his high school playing days. Todd Beamer, the guy who famously said, "Let's roll," to signal the start of the taking back of Flight 93. He played high school soccer, basketball, and baseball. He was also from a very religious Christian family who taught him to have a solid work ethic. Not much is published about Mark Sassville and Heather Penny. Perhaps they were very private people, but they could have been in the band, a cheerleader, or just a student. Maybe they like heavy metal music, country, or rap. You could look around at any male or female student sitting in the classroom, and that could be either of them, or maybe both of them. All 6 were from very different walks of life, didn't know each other personally, had never spoken to each other before that day except for Mark and Heather, but we'll get to them later. They might have had different political ideas. Some were Democrat, some Republican. One was gay, the other straight. Some athletic, some not. But the single most important thing they all shared, they were all American, every single one. Anyone who has brothers or sisters realizes that in a family, not everyone always gets along. You fuss and you fight amongst yourselves, sometimes saying things you regret. But no one outside the family better mess with the family member. Those members will come together forgetting their differences and defend each other to the final degree. This is what happened on 9/11 19 years ago. Someone messed with the American family. Someone woke the sleeping giant. These individuals I just mentioned were sitting in their respective classrooms or gymnasiums some 20 to 25 years earlier, not realizing that their country would need them in the direst of circumstances. The trials and tribulations they went through in their life would mold each one into the men and women this country would need at the exact time they would need them. These high school students never thought about the people they would help save. The mothers, fathers, grandparents, sons and daughters, people they would never meet. These students, who 15 to 20 years later were all on Flight 93. They were not military, although one was a former paratrooper. They were normal, everyday people who had a choice. Do nothing or do something. But make no mistake, both choices have consequences. We all know the story of how the 4 of these passengers helped to bring down Flight 93 in a field in Pennsylvania, so I won't repeat that. But if you do not know the story, it's well worth reading. Instead, today, let's think about the next set of heroes our country might need. Look around at the person beside you. You could be staring at that hero. Mom and Dad, you may very well be the parents of that hero. We all hope to live our lives in peace and not war. But sometimes we don't decide our fate. Fate chooses us. Before I talk about the last 2 heroes, I'd like to share with you my favorite quote by a person who embodies an American. He was an 18-year-old person of Chinese descent who left China and made his way to America. He was looking to live the American dream. His name was Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee had many quotes, but the one that embodies the heroes mentioned here today is my personal favorite. He said, "Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one." Let me say that again. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. This quote leads me to my last 2 heroes today. That quote just embodied them perfectly. Mark Sassville and Heather Penny. Mr. Sassville and Miss Penny were Air Force pilots who were forced into action that day to deal with Flight 93. Colonel Sassville and Lieutenant Penny were ordered to get in their F-16 fighter plane and get airborne and bring down Flight 93 before it got to Washington. Their orders were, by any means necessary, bring that plane down. Easy, right? Just shoot it down. But there was a problem. Colonel Sassville and Lieutenant Penny's jet was ordered in the air in such a rush to intercept Flight 93 headed to D.C. that they did not have time to arm it. Carried no bullets, no missiles. Nothing was on that plane that could be used to force Flight 93 down. Nothing but the 2 pilots. It was a suicide mission. And they both realized this before they took off. Remember what I said earlier. Those 2 could be any young man or woman sitting here today. They were in the air and were going to have to fly their plane into Flight 93 to bring it down. Penny remembers Colonel Sasseville saying, as they got ready to get to their plane, "If we do this right, Lieutenant, this should be our last takeoff." Luckily, the men and women on board Flight 93 helped to save their life as well. And yet, again, they didn't even know it. Keep in mind, Colonel Sasseville and Lieutenant Penny could have refused the order to take part in the mission. They had a choice. Missions of this nature are voluntary. When a newspaper asked Lieutenant Penny why she chose to go execute such a mission, of which she would never return to her family, here's her reply. Why, you ask? Because there are things in this world that are more important than ourselves. Freedom, the Constitution of the United States, our way of life, Mom, baseball, and apple pie. It's these things and so many more that make us uniquely Americans. We belong to something greater than ourselves. As complex, diverse, and discordant as our country is, this idea called America, it binds us together in citizenship, community, and brotherhood. So as I close, I ask you all today, as you remember what transpired 19 years ago, as we play tonight, as we cheer, as the band plays, please honor these selfless Americans by doing your best. But don't just do it tonight. Do your best in every task that you choose. In your studies, household chores, in our teaching, teachers, in our parenting, parents, in our leadership of others, and in following the rule of law. After all, isn't that what Gamecock Pride is all about? Is Gamecock Pride the same as Tiger Pride? Is it the same as Wildcat Pride? I would hope not. I would hope we are different. I hope we set ourselves apart. Stand up for those who can't or don't know they should stand up for themselves. You may be the only one standing, but pray that you have the courage that these men and women mentioned today had. You have a choice. We all have a choice. Just make sure when you lay your head down at night, after a long time that the dust clears from that long day, you can do it peacefully and you can be content in your decisions for that day. I want to thank you for your time and attention. Good luck with the game tonight, and may God bless and keep our heroes. Thank you.
Attention. Salute. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.